Okay, hello and welcome. Hi to everyone that's joining us today. I'm very pleased to be doing our second artist conversation. So my name is Bryony Bond. I'm the director at the Tetley, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Taos Makhacheva. So hi Taos, thank you for joining us today. Taos's exhibition at the Tetley opened earlier this year, so it opened in February, so quite a long time ago now, and has only just recently closed. So it closed at the end of November, unfortunately, while we were closed in the second lockdown. You can still see the exhibition, however, online. So we have done a tour of the exhibition, so you can get a little sense of the show if you missed an opportunity to see it in real life. The exhibition was a collaboration with Liverpool Biennial, so thank you to Liverpool Biennial, and followed on from Taos's exhibition with Liverpool Biennial in 2018. Taos is also shown with the Venice Biennale, the Lyon Biennale, and has had recent solo shows at Van Abbe and at Moscow Museum of Modern Art. So we were delighted to be able to work with her at the Tetley. And today we're just going to be talking about her work, primarily that's been in the exhibition, but also catching up on what Taos has been up to and future projects. So Taos, the first thing I wanted to ask you actually was about what you've been doing this year in this very strange and difficult time, and how it's affected your work and practice. And has it changed your practice in any way the last couple of months?
So, well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for an amazing show to you and to the whole team, especially to Mel, for making it possible, and to also my team as well, to Christina, Angelica, and all the studio girls. Has it changed? Yes, I'm sort of more grounded because I'm literally grounded in one place. I've been able to turn into more archiving, which is great for posterity or any type of posterity that might come in the future, if any at all. But also, I think I've been increasingly thinking about future feelings and skills that we might need, and things that we might need to develop in order to live differently on this planet. I mean, it sounds grand, but in a way it manifested in something that I'm working on right now, and I'll share the presentation that I have now, so we can see a few. Things.
Great.
So this is. It's a project for France Masserial Centrum in Belgium, and I've been approached by Stigen with a program that they're doing called Solitude, and it's basically dedicated to how to experience art at home, not how to experience art from home. So kind of trying to move away from constant experience through screen, but having actually something physical to encounter and to work with. Not work with, but experience, I think is the best word. So the project that I've proposed and that's been developing in conversation with my team and with the team at the Centrum is called Mining Serendipity. And it's basically a set of jewelry, but I call it set of body-oriented artifacts. And it actually comes from my mother's article, who wrote on jewelry and how it can constitute at different types of bodies in this world, in other worlds that are perhaps existing in parallel reality of sorts. So how it forms, and also how jewelry marks different liminality periods, different periods of transitions. So every piece of, well, let's call them charm, is dedicated to something. For example, one is dedicated to a term that comes from cyberfeminism called steam engine effect, where same ideas...
Steam engine, what was that again, Taos?
Steam engine effect. So where same ideas appear in the world at exactly the same time, and different people can have it. And I guess it relates to the fact that steam engine was sort of invented in different parts of the world at the same time. Then there's something called something we've invented, actually, a term, distant emergency synesthesia, which is based on mirror touch synesthesia. When you see someone being, I don't know, hurt or feeling something, and you mirror the feelings, you feel the same way. And the sort of this new skill or feeling that we came up with, it is meant to function through screen and through distance. So it's kind of different new ways of empathizing to other people. And for example, the actual charm related to it has an imprint of crystals that are base of all the LCD screens. So it's kind of very much related to the screen, but also mirrors feelings of people in a long distance way. I can say that. And then there's another one. Well, I'll say just a few things, I guess. Maybe called morphic resonance. And it's also a real thing. Or where birds, for example, they know where to fly, where to nest, where to die, even without anyone teaching them. So some sort of inherent knowledge of direction. So we also have a little piece dedicated to that. And you can also kind of, you can form it in any way you want. You can have a shorter chain, longer, where 1, where 3, where 7. But I'm very cautious. It's not something that will give you these abilities. It's kind of small metaphors for these potential abilities that might have value in the future, and I believe have value now. So this is what I've been doing currently, just sort of, playing with smaller things. And also it's important that, it's going to be sold at cost price, and it's a mini museum that you assemble yourself, that it's kind of, it's this one-on-one experience with an artwork. And for example, one of the objects, it will be immersed in a candy. So you actually have to suck away the candy in order to access it. So it's very much about kind of embodied knowledge. And then it will be made from porcelain. So it actually also references a work of a friend of mine, Gaia Fugaza, where she had an artwork. It was a basically contraception pill made from porcelain, and you had to hold it in your mouth during the performance. And I was very sort of mesmerized with this idea of, having an encounter with an artwork with different sensory,
senses, I guess.
Pocket, with different pocket of senses, which is your mouth, I suppose. Yeah, sorry, go on.
And so how many of these will be made, Taz?
I think it's 50, but because we don't want to create, this additional value of making it limited edition, we decided that it's going to be unlimited, unsigned, but numbered. So in case they'll be sold and the center wants to produce more, we'll make more.
Great. That's really, yes.
You want to order
artworks by post, artworks by click and collect.
Yeah, it's very much that.
So I guess, yes, so kind of moving away from kind of performative works, and I guess, I imagine that you travel a lot normally. That's kind of like, I imagine you spend quite a lot of time on a plane. So a much smaller scale, kind of intimate, more, I guess, kind of, controlled aspect of your work, possibly from lockdown.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think what everyone experienced, well, I can't really speak for everyone, but I think one important thing is that everybody met themselves. And I think this was kind of the most difficult meeting of all. Like a lot of people had a lot of realizations of who they actually are, what they think, and what they want to change in their thinking. So maybe a lot of the things became, even though they're also going outwards into the world and thinking about, I don't know, future of our planet, perhaps. A lot of things have also concentrated on how to foster and sort of develop that inner change. But if we talk about this kind of outer world and interests in the outer world that I used to have and still have, and this kind of constant traveling, we also come to this idea of change, and change through small gestures, change through kind of smaller figures, that I've been potentially interested in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was going to kind of ask you about that because I guess in some ways these charms, you said they don't bestow powers, but they kind of hint at kind of perhaps super a superpower, I guess, and that's definitely something that your work kind of has touched on before in the past. And I was kind of interested in this quality that seems to have come through in this work as well, about these extra human powers that are perhaps kind of maybe from the natural world, like you were saying about birds migrating, or about people that have particular kind of heightened abilities, so the synesthesia and things like that. And yeah, where does that interest come from in that kind of unusual powers, I guess?
Well, I think it actually started with me traveling to Tehran in Iran. Oh God, in 2012 maybe I went with my friend Daria Kirsanova, and we to do a show there, which she curated. And I met a superhero called Super Sahrab, who was a superhero from Tehran, and sort of it's a persona of a curator and artist, Sohrab Kashani. And I was sort of mesmerized with it. I was mesmerized with the parallel life that persona had, and I was mesmerized that you can just make someone else into being, and that the way his persona liberated notions of masculinity, because he didn't have any superpowers, he just kind of tried, failed, tried, failed, tried, succeeded, failed, succeeded. Kind of like just very real human human functionality, and that triggered an appearance of Super Taos actually, which became an alter ego of mine, or she considers herself an alter ego of me and her alter ego. So there's this two parallel lives constantly having, which also kind of resulted in my wider interest in superheroes, and another project that I did with my partner, Sabi Ahmed, called Superhero Sighting Society, which was actually exhibited, was exhibited at the Tetley.
Yeah, it's actually come down now. Exactly, it's been there for a long time. Yeah, so tell us a bit about Superhero Sighting Society, because yeah, we showed this work at the Tetley as well.
So it's, I mean, it came out of an invitation by Caddis Foundation. But initially, kind of the idea was to do something with Super Taos, but it just felt kind of a little bit too narrow, and I wanted to expand. And plus, I wanted to think wider about other superheroes, about what they're doing, why they come into being, what are these kind of smaller ground up changes that people are trying to initiate, I suppose. So it's actually an installation by the Superhero Sighting Society, which was formed at Caddis in 2019. We didn't want to go too much into this historicizing, into this I don't know, fictional world of something that we've discovered. So kind of our years, our dates, and it's been collecting accounts of different superheroes. And we worked together with Jessica Sagsby, who's an amazing writer, to write up different stories. And we wrote about 30 stories. And they were based on real superheroes that we found, that we researched. But then they were also twisted. For example, from Britain, I think we found a superhero, Angle Grinder Man, who carries an angle grinder and kind of liberates car from these, like, I don't know, stoppage brackets. I'm not sure how they're called. So we wrote... Yeah, from clamps, yes. So we wrote a story from a perception of a woman who's been given also this angle grinder, and, like, you know, and felt empowered to do the same thing. And then there was also a group called, one guy which we found, I think in Bristol, called the Apostrophizer, who was removing apostrophes on different street signs. But we've invented the group that was anti-apostrophizer, who wanted to return the unruliness to English language. So they placed them back. So kind of a lot of playful things. And for example, one of my favorites was this superhero from Japan called Carry Your Pram Ranger, who wore a ranger costume and helped people carry their prams up the stairs on one metro station that didn't have a lift. So he would just constantly be there. But the story was written from a perspective of a costume shop owner who sold him that costume. But then he was very suspicious. He thought, who'd want this old costume? This guy was really strange. So he was almost getting ready to identify him for police until he saw him at the train station doing this. And then he submitted his report to the Superhero Sighting Society. So it's essentially a landscape. And I think this is one of the things we were interested in when we were doing the Superhero Summit. The Superhero Sighting Society and Superhero Summit, which was a symposium dedicated to superheroes, is looking at this landscape of these figures. Of course, we didn't want to take sort of America and, I don't know, superpowers off the American military complex and this idea of a hero embodying a country. We wanted to sort of stir away from that. And another element were these mountains, and we commissioned super towers to do them. And these are unclimbed mountains that alpine climbers call last greatest problems. And well, I mean, I was quite surprised to find out that there were unclimbed mountains in Alps.
Yes, exactly. I was quite surprised. And then I spent some time in the exhibition having a look around these mountains and thinking, actually, no, it looks like a very difficult thing to get up. I couldn't see any way that you could kind of do it. But it was quite interesting looking at these impossible feats. Do you think, I mean, there's been a lot in the UK, I'm not sure about with you, Tas, but there's been a lot about kind of heroes, local heroes in the UK during lockdown. And in fact, there was the Stockport Spider-Man, I think, was one of the things that kind of came out where I think it was a guy, it was actually two of them, I think. It was a guy and a mate that would kind of go on their like daily jog, taking their daily exercise in a Spider-Man costume. And then all the local kids would kind of delight in spotting Spider-Man kind of running past their houses. And I was kind of interested in whether well, firstly, if that phenomenon has been something that you've experienced at all, where you've been in lockdown, and also if it's made you think differently about Superhero Sighting Society, or would you want to kind of do another version of that? Or what's your kind of experience on it post lockdown?
I think in a way we were interested in the worlds that were invented and in the special abilities that were invented and in the personas that were invented. We weren't that interested in things that were referenced from, like, of course, there's always a reference to superheroes embedded in even naming it. But for example, some of the heroes we found, they weren't even named. We assigned their small practice of, I don't know, helping people cross the road and pointing kind of right directions and lifting granny's bags that fall. So we've assigned the heroism to that. So we were kind of we were interested in sort of this borderline, I don't know, slightly invisible, but someone who's molding something new into being through their daily practice. So I'm not sure about the example with the Spider-Man that you gave. I mean, I think we actually had one hero who was actually called by the people Spider-Man, who saved a child in France by climbing a building, and then he received a citizenship from the president. I mean, a very kind of murky territory. What do you need to do in order to gain citizenship? Who do you need to become? And we sort of trying to question that. Have I rethought? I don't know. I think kind of the heroic became much more evident in a lot of in other fields like medicine lately, but I don't know if it would affect the project in a way. I don't even know if there has to be another iteration. It's also like you also have to let go works sometimes. You sort of do, and then you let them live, and then they're specific to a certain moment, because otherwise, if you try to make it contemporary all the time, it's just you're just stuck in one work. You become a one work artist that just sort of perpetually regurgitates. And I think I get too excited by different things like jewelry, public art, I don't know, invisible works or something else, or alternative lives or crazy art groups, to perpetually sort of chew on one thing.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I mean, I guess I was thinking in some ways, kind of interest in moving, or I guess in the same way that you said about assigning heroism. I think that was what I was kind of thinking about. In some ways, was actually like, there's been a lot more of that recently, in kind of assigning heroism to kind of quite, quite large acts of bravery, but also kind of smaller, more everyday kind of practices. Anyway, maybe the superhero society, citing society, kind of encouraged that kind of attitude that the small deeds should be seen as slightly more heroic.
I know, like, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not too excited by claiming ownership of a special intuition towards what's going to happen in the world. I'm really not into this. Yeah,
Fair enough.
into seeing the future. But I think also it's a certain type of attention that artists possess. That is valuable to all of us.
Definitely. Well, I think you've brought up a picture, of another work. We've got Supertass's.
I think I misplaced in my presentation. It should have been this and then the other.
But yeah, Supertass. So how long has Supertass been around, Tass?
Oh God! Well, this one says 1983. So it depends where you look at her. If you look at her in my artistic oeuvre, then let me see. Let me think about it. When did she appear? Yeah, I think like 2014. I think. But if you think of this story and her perception of me and my perception of her, it's 2000. It's 1983 when I was born. So that's when she came into existence. And in a way, it's a parallel life that allows me to live the life I want and her to live the life she wants. So it's kind of it's two different parallel worlds that enable another one to exist by existing in themselves.
So could you tell us a little bit about Supertass's life story? Like, and what does she do?
So she studied at the Dagestani State Pedagogical Institute. She lives in Sada Mountain Village, where my grandfather is from, and she works in a kindergarten there, has a family, but was born super strong. So one of the first things that appeared was this video, and we can watch a clip, and it's basically um, a clip from accidentally recorded on a dashboard camera. I mean, in a way, everything she does is very matter of fact. You know, she's like just, you know, what's on her way gets out. So she's also in a way like an homage to a lot of my relatives, that just female relatives that just kind of get on with it.
They just, yes, exactly. And I like the reaction of the workmen in that video. They just watch where the rock goes, and there's no kind of questioning of the incredible feat of strength that they've just seen conducted. It's just like, that's kind of what happens. Super Taos comes along and sorts it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of feel a little bit troubled by the fact that you know, they've acted so casually, but that if they didn't, it might have been a little bit over the top.
And so Taos kind of, Super Taos gets on with her daily life and just kind of solves these things that just kind of crop up for her. I was going to ask about the other feat of hers, because she's a little bit of an activist, I guess, as well, in some ways, in that she was quite keen that some women were memorialized in Dagestan.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like you're referring to Untitled 2 that I'll show in a second, but I think this is also like the portrait that we're seeing now relates very much to Super Taos. It's actually not my work, but one of my favorite works called Cosmic Mother by Galina Konopatska from 1970s. And to me, it's kind of this really incredible image of a woman cosmonaut, empowered, you know, during like Cold War with the baby. Like it's just an incredibly powerful painting, and then also in a way predecessor of Super Taos of sorts, like her cosmic, I don't know, spiritual mother, if I can use that word. But in terms of the work that the Untitled 2, another thing that she did, and it's also important because she doesn't call them works, she refers to them as life-affirming practices. So she found out about an attempted theft of a Rothschild abstract composition from one of the Dagestani museums that you see on the screen here. And then the theft was prevented by two museum invigilators, Maria Garkmasova and Khamisat Abdullaeva, who were just sort of women in their 40s and 50s. And one of them, Khamisat, she saw a thief that cut out the painting from a frame, like empty frame, and told the other invigilator, and the other one ran after him and snatched it back. So kind of, you know, we're not talking, it's like 90s, we're not talking crazy museum security, we're like literally talking just invigilators and one security guy. And these women, I was really drawn, and Super Taos was really drawn to this kind of impulse of not think of anything else, but kind of save the artwork. And actually, after this work, one museum worker from Moscow came up to me. Unfortunately, I didn't get her name, but she told me a story how a museum collection keeper, they weren't called keepers, curators in the Soviet times, they were called collection keepers. She saw like a statue falling and she ran to grab it. And I'm thinking like, what, like it's marble or it's like granite, it's super heavy. And like, what makes you forget that? It's incredible. Like, I think it's pretty, the impulse is pretty incredible. So she wanted to create the monument, obviously large scale, bronze, tall in the main square, to Khamisat and Maria. But then she kind of created a smaller version and took it into different institutions around the world. She took it to Pompidou, and we're going to watch a short clip. She took it to Moscow Museum of Modern Art. She walked around it in Dagestan, trying to find a good space for it. And then fourth video was her walking by foot, carrying this bronze monument on her back from Makhacheva to Moscow for 10 days. But yeah, let's just watch a short one of the clips.
She does a really good matter-of-fact install as well, Taus. Like, she just carries it in on her back, puts it in the gallery, job done.
Exactly. And she did the same thing at the Moscow Museum of Modern Art. And we can watch a short clip from her walk around in Makhacheva, if you think. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's just Lenin Square with a Lenin in the square, and then the museum where that thing has actually happened. And it's all shot with like different phone cameras, and then sort of assembled together for that documentary feel, I suppose.
Did someone start helping her though?
Hmm?
Did someone just jump in and start helping her?
Yeah, yes.
Great. And I guess there's kind of lots to kind of think about with Super Taus, really, in the way that she operates, but also I guess in what she's doing. What did she want to achieve by kind of moving the sculpture around, and did she want to achieve its permanent home or recognition of these particular women, or this deed that had happened and that maybe wasn't quite so well known? What did she want to kind of accomplish?
Well, I'd say it wasn't known at all, because there was no bonus from the museum. There was no, even the papers that we found at the time, they all said that the members of the police prevented the theft. And there was no mention of their names. And I actually was lucky because I got to speak to one of them, to Humisat. I mean, unfortunately, she passed away before I decided to do the work, but I had like a short interview with her when I found out about the story. So it was, yeah, it's kind of making visible certain labor, making visible that situation, making visible that impulse, I guess, which was incredibly important, and which is a result of a certain, it is a result of certain ideology, and also, so it's, I guess it's showing different faces of reality that we're living in, and also it's kind of addressing a question of the fact that there are not too many monuments to real particular specific women in Dagestan. There's a lot of monuments to specific men, but then to women it's like this woman teacher, kind of to all the teachers that would come from Soviet Union, Moscow universities that were allocated to teach in mountain villages in Dagestan, and generally kind of in rural and urban areas. So there are these kind of women, imaginary collective image of women, but kind of specific ones much less. So it's that, it's yeah, I guess it's a lot of things, but I think I'm very drawn to just different types of visibilities, and collecting different stories and different artifacts, sometimes very shiny artifacts, and sharing that excitement about the shine of the artifacts.
I guess as well, I think there's also there's something I'd like to pick up on public sculpture, which I think maybe we might return to again, but just on Super Taus as well. I mean, I guess she's dressed in Dagestani traditional clothing. It's not costume, is it? It's kind of just day-to-day clothing. And I guess in the galleries that you're kind of that Super Taus is essentially kind of working in, kind of moving this sculpture around and installing, someone wearing that costume isn't always seen, I'm assuming. Certainly not Sandra Pompidou, possibly not in the Gallery of Modern Art in Moscow. And is that also how that's kind of seen in those different spaces, how
Yeah,
that's represented.
yeah, no, of course, that's a very good point that you're making, and like, of course, it's a certain persona, but it's also this thing, this very naive. She's quite naive, I must say. Very naive belief that you can just walk into a canon, that you can just walk into a certain history of art and place something there. So it's kind of it's completely not knowing the language, but believing that it's yours. The space is also yours. And I think it's actually quite similar to one of the very early performances that I did. I think it's one of my first in, I don't know, maybe 2003 or something, when I walked into Tate Modern in Turbine Hall and around Tate with big sandwich boards that said, I want my show at Tate Modern, with my CD at the back. So it's exactly about this, not knowing an institutional language, but having the, I don't know, some sort of crazy ambition or idea. And I remember actually one of my teacher, actually no, it was Gail Pickering. I remember exactly who was it, at my BA at Goldsmith, asking me, so, but what would you show? I was like, oh, I would show that performance, like if you were offered, right now, the show at Tate. I was like, oh, I would show this performance. And then I was like, oh, and some documentary photography that I have. But obviously I had nothing to show. Like there was no, it was a work about not knowing the language of access, I suppose. So in a way, she's similar. She's also fiddling with that language.
I think, yeah, as well, I guess, the benefit of having an alter ego is to kind of be able to kind of behave in that way that is actually quite liberating and kind of sidesteps that kind of accepted practice of behavior within the art. So I can kind of see the attraction of the alter ego. I know that we'll probably return to public sculpture as something we want to kind of discuss. I mean, it's interesting that really recently in the UK, I don't know if you heard about it, there was a public monument to Mary Wollstonecraft, and there was a very heated debate about the resulting sculpture that came from it. It was by Maggie Hambling, and it was essentially a naked woman. And there were lots of kind of comments about, and it was also interestingly, they talked about it being a universal woman rather than necessarily a particular individual. And there was a lot of backlash on it, lots of people on, responding about, why hasn't this person been actually remembered for what she did, and why did it have to kind of represent everyone? And also, fundamentally, why has she not got any clothes on? But it kind of, public sculpture, I guess, kind of gets people heated in a way that, and obviously the recent kind of toppling of sculptures in the UK in response to Black Lives Matter, and are rethinking a lot about public sculpture. It's something that really, demonstrates the fact that it still has power, that people are still very, it's not a power that's diminished, I would say. And I was wondering about, I guess I was kind of thinking around public sculpture in that way that I know you've kind of started to look at. And did you find a permanent home for your sculptures, or are they?
It was never meant to be found. That's like she was always meant to be unsatisfied with all the potential spots. So it's somewhere in her storage, and the way I show her life affirming practice is just for screens of these attempts. So yeah, I think it was never meant to find a place, which is potentially a little bit depressing. But also, like, I think we have to remember that, in UK and, I don't know, France or Europe, public sculpture occupy a very different place. I don't think they're such living symbols of sort of memory and reality. I think as they are in Russia. I think, like, in Russia, there's still an aspiration to become a monument. And I don't think in the UK there is that aspiration that, I don't know, writers have or people have. I think, yeah, in Russia, like, it's a still thing that certifies towards something. So it carries a very different meaning. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's very, or at least kind of people that have commemorated it are more historical. And I guess the kind of reflection at the moment is about, are we reflecting the right people in history? Are we actually kind of telling the full story?
Yeah, like in a way, I understand the debate, but I'm really generally not a fan of constant erasure, because like I come from a country that likes to erase and build anew, erase and build anew, erase and build anew. And I'm really in love with the project that Amina Menia did, about this real thing that happened in Algeria. I think it was a monument commissioned and built by the French to soldiers of the, I think, First World War, and then another artist has been commissioned much later to hide that monument and sort of and build something over it. And he decided not to destroy it because I think the destruction was also on the cards. So he just built another sculpture around it. And at some point it gave a crack. So you can see that the newer monument and the other monument inside of it. And kind of she did a whole project about this history of like trying to, contain one monument and another, doing some sort of Russian doll. So I was really mesmerized of how you can build something on top of the other, how you can, I don't know, have one president in another president in another president, I don't know, modify these constant Lenin squares into something else. And there's something in that containment or something in that rethinking that is much more valuable than just taking it to a park with derelict and abandoned political waste.
No, interesting. Very interesting on those kind of different, different experiences across the world of that public monument. But yes, let's turn to the Unbound, which is here actually. It'd be really great, to talk a little bit about this particular work, Taos. I mean, I guess I'm very interested in it, particularly in your relationship to Dagestan. And how did this come about? Was it something you were kind of working on for a long time, or I know it's a collaboration, isn't it, with a wider group?
So it actually happened. It happened in 2015, the project for the first time. And actually, this was the second exhibition at the Tetley, and I'm so grateful you guys were up for it because it hasn't seen much light and hasn't met a lot of gaze. And it's anonymous, but basically it's me and my friend Andrei Mziana, who's also a curator. And more people, Nikita Dmitriev, Gleb Berg wrote amazing texts for it and kind of did a lot for the project. Farhad Farzaliyev, Ilyas Hadji, whose projects are presented separately, not as part of this anonymous group. And I think it also relates to methodology that I'm particularly excited by. And it's much more to the core of how I start usually my projects, but as myself, I develop them very differently. They become kind of this larger, gentler metaphors. And here, the metaphor happens through text and through description. So I don't know, in this image that you see, unfortunately, this large object didn't travel to Tetley, but this was done with a famous furniture maker in Dagestan. And we asked him to create a collage of the most desired objects in the most desired style that he could think of. And we ended up with this kind of strange curtain, cupboard, through more painting, kind of strange insect of sorts, but as an illustration of kind of desired Baroque style. And there were other things that were collected when I was kind of thinking about the sparkly thing, these Uggs boots with Chanel logo that very much just were left as a symbol now because like it's an unimaginable thing. And these shoes, which were also made by local shoemakers with our sketches with kind of very elongated noses. And that was a trend at some point in 2000. That kind of man in the Caucasus would wear like these shoes with super long noses. And Andrei wrote a beautiful text where he spoke about the fact that this elongated nose was a leftover, so sort of like atavism, some sort of leftover from the union between the rider and a horse, between a warrior and his horse, because they would allow him to sit and hold on in stirrups much better. So this is this longing or cry for your abandoned war horse. So a lot of the things, and one thing, I won't show it today, but there was one video there were two videos that I'm particularly fond of. One was, that I filmed about with a friend of mine who was biting an ice cream. Because, it was sort of a pun on the fact that men in the Caucasus can't lick, they only bite, even with ice cream. And then there was another video that was that I accidentally basically filmed in the car. I called a taxi once in Makhacheva, and the guy had two window shields, two glass windows. It was like a double. One was tinted, and another one was completely clear because, according to law, you can't have tinted windows. But when you're partying or hiding somewhere in the mountains, making out or something else, you need to tint up. So whenever he passed police, it was a clear glass. But then, it's like, it comes from my crazy excitement and admiration for the flexibility that you invent in these daily practices and how they can unpick something larger that is happening. So yeah, I think Unbound can be described as that. So in a way, it is this fascination with the daily that erupts into something bigger, but approached from a very different perspective. But kind of, I guess, similar to what Supertaus does, is that it's just that her focus is on something else, similar to what I do. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess they're kind of like, in some ways, they're a bit of an ethnography.
Yeah, it's definitely, because he's an anthropologist, Andre. So they're very, like, there is this anthropological sort of ethnographic angle of trying to rethink and trying to remap, actually maybe trying to even put on the map this flexibility and not kind of constantly perceiving Caucasus as the other. So it's owning something else.
Did you want to show a video from Unbound, or was it?
I think we have a couple of more works, and it's.
Oh yes, we're kind of we're going to talk about something.
I think we're a bit behind. So
sorry, I'm kind of just chatting. I'm just enjoying it now. But yes, we're going to talk about a little bit about Gamsuto, which I guess in some ways kind of carries this on. I mean, interestingly, when I was Googling Dagestan house, this is the image that comes up. I don't know.
When you're what? Say it again.
If you Google Dagestan, the image of Gamsuto is one of the kind of key images that actually kind of comes up when you're actually kind of looking for it.
That's good. I'm very happy about that.
And so, I mean, Gamsuto is the name of the village that we're looking at.
Yeah, and it's so I actually initially saw an image of this village in a photograph by Zurgalov, this very good photographer who traveled a lot in Dagestan, and it was in 2011, I think. And at the time, I decided to go there. I also spoke to a local historian, Petimat Takhnaeva, because she's been there, and she interviewed the only guy that used to live there at the time, Abdujalilov. And I went and I met him, and it was very interesting. I mean, he was kind of an incredible mind. He had bees on his balcony, which he chatted to, listened to radio, and wanted to make there like a sort of a very interesting kind of ecological park. That's what he kind of decided. That's what he kind of imagined this place being. And he moved back in, I think, the 90s because he had an argument with his relatives about the flat that they were living in. But maybe that's irrelevant. But the fact that he was living there alone, and I guess the whole architecture gave me this idea of thinking about a space and thinking about enacting history of a space, of a place, through choreography. And through different things, because it was basically kind of the way it was built on the rocks. It was to use the farmlands for farming, whatever kind of flat lands there were, and also kind of as a protection, as a kind of a military protection site that is kind of, you see everyone who's approaching, and it's super high up, and it's very well, it functions very well from war perspective, I suppose. And then I met a choreographer, Anya Balichina, and we started thinking like, what can it be? And I brought her a ton of printouts of war paintings from the Dagestani Museum of Fine Art and the Historical Museum of Dagestan. I was like, how can we turn this into a dance? Like, can we do something about it? And she turned it into a dance. And there's actually a few segments of the work that are based on different themes. One is this first part, which is based on war paintings of the Great Caucasian War when Dagestan became part of Russia. And he mimics movements of both the Russian Imperial Army and the Highlanders Army. And then the second part is based on a dance of a collective farm brigade leader, because everyone was moved from that village and a lot of other high mountain villages into these collective Soviet farms in 60s and 70s in order to build a better future, I suppose, and farm better lands. And also, once you want to remap the roads and you want to remap the living conditions and move people once kind of the land becomes your own in a way. And then the third fragment of the video, third part of it, is based on kind of my contemporary thinking of relationship to ruin and relationship to a place and connection to a place that you might occupy. And we can watch short excerpts from the video. Oh, sorry. I don't know what I've done there.
There's a short excerpt. Let's see something.
Sorry, I wanted to scroll, but it didn't work out the way that I planned. Just give me 1 second.
Sure. And were you saying that there was actually someone that was still living in the village at the time that you were filming this?
Yes, exactly. I think it's back, maybe. Sorry, 1 second. Can you see now? I'm still screen sharing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Little thumbnails. And now.
Sorry, you said yes. There was so Abdul Jalil was there alone. I don't know, for maybe 10 years. I mean, unfortunately now he passed away. But then maybe it's good because there's a crazy flow of tourists at the moment. When we went up, he once told me, it's like, oh, we had a very busy summer. I had like 3 groups visit. Now I think when I went up this summer, I saw about 60 people on the way up and down. So
Wow.
it's really, yeah, it's really a lot. I mean, it's great that the space gets experienced, but I guess it wouldn't be so quiet for him.
I'm
So this.
guessing I was kind of interested in that actually, in your work about the relationship between not it's not a nostalgia, but a kind of a memory or a kind of perhaps um, imagined idea of a Dagestani past, and then and how that kind of meets a kind of present reality, I guess, in some ways, and I think the Unbound and maybe Gamsutel is a little bit about that. And I was wondering about how is that is that kind of a mirror about your kind of personal experience of Dagestan, or how do you experience Dagestan yourself?
Mm, I like this, what you say about imagined idea, because I also collect a lot of mm, seemingly crazy stories and try to make up confirmations for them. When I was doing research for tightrope, one of the tightrope walkers we interviewed said that, oh, like ancient times, our forefathers used to put a tightrope between 2 mountains and walk, so it would be shorter to walk between them. And I would, and once I did a silk screen print where the actual photograph was it was photoshopped, but it was exactly this, like a tiny tightrope walker between 2 mountains. So I really like this imaginary history, an imaginary idea or imagined memory. How do I experience it? I don't know, in a way through fascination to these imagined histories, and at some point it becomes at some point facts also become irrelevant because you sort of immerse yourself into stories of people that surround you. So I do experience it a lot through imagination of people around me, I would say, and people that I meet there. This may be one thing, but then I guess experiencing actual nature is very different. It's very, yeah, it's just kind of very personal and fortifying experience to yourself.
Yeah. Thanks, Tass. I think we said we'd open up to questions at 1 o'clock, but I know we wanted to talk a little bit about ASMR Spa. So, actually, what is this painting that we have up on screen at the moment? Did you want to mention that?
This is a painting by Franz Roubaud, and this is exactly one of the paintings that were reference work for his dance in the beginning of the film when we see the full panorama of Gamsutel. But then again, it's such an image of romanticized war. It's nothing close to anything factual in a way, and you can't actually tell whose side the artist was on because he was commissioned by the imperial army. But then, yeah, it's still a big question. Well, maybe it doesn't even matter. And then, so these are just the references for Gamsutra, and that's also often how I work. So this is the dance of a collective farm brigade leader that I mentioned that the second part is based on, because the middle history and the history of this abandonment is very recent. We're talking like 1960s, 1970s when people were moved into these collective farms. So it crumbled very quickly. It crumbled within like, I don't know, 40 years, so much. I mean, it's the architectural builds and kind of without people, the moisture is not pushed out after the rain. So it's yeah, it relates to that. But yeah, so those 3 parts. We can go back to last work that we wanted to touch upon that kind of actually served as a catalyst to our meeting and to in Liverpool in 2000.
Yeah. Yeah,
18.
exactly. Yes, this is the new work that you created for Liverpool Biennial, wasn't it? That we also showed, and was the kind of linchpin of the partnership with Liverpool Biennial. And I mean, it's. Do you want to talk a little bit about how this came about? I mean, because it was quite closely related to the venue, wasn't it, in Liverpool in which it was shown?
Yeah, yeah. It's so I was invited by Sally and Kitty, and I went and I was taken to different places, and I was really mesmerized with Blackburn House, who is an education center for women and used to be the first school for girls in Liverpool. And at some point, it was also sort of closed down, abandoned. And when it was reopened to become this education center, there were shards of sculpture that was found at the entrance. And actually, I saw a photograph of this sculpture, and it was like three muses or something like that, a copy of three muses. This sort of Greek, classical Greek theme, I suppose. And and I talked to Brenda, who was a deputy director, and she told me a lot of interesting things. And one thing I remembered quite well was that, when women go to study, by the mid-year, by Christmas, they hit something that they refer to as the brick wall. When they kind of feel that they're failing, they can't deal with homework, kids are ill at school, and they usually send someone when they feel kind of the woman kind of is not coping too well and might drop the studies, to kind of help her go through that wall, through that brick wall, onto have her move on through that brick wall. So it was a very kind of gentle space, and a space of repair, and a space of potentially repairing those sharded sculptures or faces or selves. Uh, from different situations. And at the time, I just did a work for Riga Biennial, and it was very much about slowness, slowing down, different perception of time. And I was interested in ASMR videos, because to me, there were these very interesting simulations of um, connection or intimacy through the screen. And it was incredibly interesting why they were so popular. I'm sure they're even more popular now. And actually, that was the point when I found out about mere synesthesia from Michael Banassi, who worked at the psychology department at Goldsmith, and actually Liverpool Biennial set up a meeting for it. So, which carried on into this jewelry right now. So a lot of things, I think, emerged from that work and kept on being reworked. And there were several elements to the work. There was a sculptural installation, which was done by Alexander Kutavoy, this amazing colleague of mine, amazing artist. And basically what he did, and what we sort of experimented with together, he took a head, sort of this Greek classical head that students usually study and test, draw from in art schools, and he kept breaking it. And then when we saw the pieces that would fit our idea, we then later he made copies and made them into this large sculpture. So you see, you can make out a cheek, a bit of hair, a bit of neck. And then it was very interesting how he spoke about surfaces. This particular sculptural element of the work had three types of surfaces: the prehistoric, which was this kind of stone surface, and then the ancient, being the kind of Greek cheek, and then he called it Euro renovations surface, which when in the 90s you would kind of renovate your home, you would kind of try to do it sleek but fail. So there's a little bit of failure in that surface, embedded in that surface. And I've never actually worked with someone or actually heard someone speak so conceptually about materiality, but maybe it's just my lack of awareness of the way sculptors work. So this was one element, and another element, there was a facial that you could book, and the beautician narrated a story written by David McDermott, who's this incredible writer who at the time was based in Liverpool. And the story retells her story, the beautician's story, the story of her skill, the story how somebody came to do this facial, and he was an art restorer, and he came because he wanted to feel what his paintings felt when he was restoring them. And she talked about mere synesthesia, the fact that she has it, about empathy, about the works that have been left after other Liverpool biennials in the city. And if you couldn't book an actual face show, you could watch the video, the ASMR video that we recorded, where the story would be audible and all the sounds of kind of things being applied to your face, washed off, crinkled, brushed, would also be audible. There was one more element that I want to mention that would take kind of just a few more minutes, is that we developed a special line of beauty products for it with Tigran Gilitsan from 2211 in Moscow. And this was very interesting. I mean, I love this kind of, it became a conceptual spa, potentially my alternative career. So we had different products based on different sculptural processes. There was a clay cleanser, metal-infused toner, scrub with mineral granite, wood massage oil, and then a plaster mask that you would remove and would leave an imprint. And then the last thing was cream, where main ingredients were linseed oil and cotton extract. And it's basically, if you try to make a moisturizing cream out of an oil painting, that's what you'll get. So kind of you go through this molding, kind of through these stories, and kind of absorb a painting and leave. Well, hopefully transformed in some way, but yeah, that is not for me to say. So yeah, briefly, this is the one.
It's quite a great, in some ways, it's quite a good summation of your practice as well, in that, you know, it kind of touches on lots of things from restoration, conflating the body and the art object, you know, that you are this kind of broken art object being restored by a beautician / conservator.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of things, and I guess in a way, you know, the performance that becomes part of the work as well. So yes, I can see it. I think the ASMR spa is actually a really good summation of lots of the areas of interest in your work. I'm going to turn to some of the questions that we've been asked actually online, so that we actually kind of bring in some of the voices. They're really great questions, actually. I'm going to start off with the first one that's on my screen. Is how can you explain how the exhibition name "Hold Your Horses" came about? Which is such a good point, and I forgot to ask you that. Where does the name come from, Taz?
Oh, I need to open my notes. I need to remember. So I think, well, first of all, I like playful names, playful exhibition names, and I think it was in relation to patience, different timing, and holding back sort of first intuitive, no, not intuitive, knee-jerk judgments. Yes, let's put it that way. So I think it was about that. It was kind of like, you know, giving it time. Let's see. But I think also it somehow ended up relating to Tetley as well, and how it used to function. I think Mel told me, if I remember correctly.
Is that around the horses delivering the yes, so yes, they used to be dray horses that used to take deliveries of beer around the city, and I mean well into the 90s, and I think even into the 2000s, that those horses were still used because it was such a kind of symbol, I think, of the company, that they couldn't really get rid of them. I think they tried to get rid of them at one stage, and there was like a huge influx of letters to the Yorkshire Post. So yeah, the horses became synonymous with the Tetley brand in the city. So so yes, I guess, yeah, horses certainly have been kind of part of the history of the building.
Yeah, I mean that's a far off connection, but still. I was happy with it. But it's like, you know, kind of, I had a show recently, and a House of Media Art in House of Media Art in Germany, and the show ended up being called "Sturdy Black Shoes." And it was actually from an essay by Uzma Rizvi on my work. And this was something that related to Supertaus's attire, and, you know, the way she dealt with patriarchy and kind of this kind of stepping over. So it's and it relates to wider unpacking and pushing boundaries of the body and of patriarchies, masculinities as well.
Yes, great. I think there were kind of some comments as well in the about it being, this idea of patience and kind of status also being something that kind of felt quite relevant in the subsequent time when it was kind of locked down and doors were shut on the show, and then you kind of had to wait to kind of get back and things like that. So it ended up, I think it was also, Taos, I think, the longest running show we've ever had at Tetley, I think, without a doubt.
Not the biggest footfall, but the longest.
Yes, definitely. So in some ways it started to take on another resonance as well of patience. The other question we've been asked is, how did you approach curating your work in the Tetley's gallery spaces? Were there any challenges you faced, or any works you think worked well in the space?
Maybe you want to tell about our first meeting?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember in what context, House. I mean, I showed you around the spaces because it is such a unique gallery space, and it is always, it presents opportunities and it presents challenges, definitely, with exhibiting any work. But yes, I mean, what was your response to the space?
So I think we laid out the show like almost completely in the first meeting.
We did, very productive.
It was very one of my first visits, but of course things moved around a little bit. And then, we wanted to bring the aerostatic experience. There was this work of this giant balloon, which we wanted the whole atrium to occupy, but that didn't work out due to some certain limitations. But yeah, we laid it out quite quickly, and it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was very difficult. I mean, it's because it's such a beautiful space, like kind of really, and I love placing works in spaces that are filled with something. I work easily in black cubes, in white cubes, and in spaces that are filled with I don't know, historical paneling or histories, and I think it was kind of an easy layout, but then. And also kind of I like that it allowed some migrations for things. And I'm only referring to this inflatable balloon, which we were able to inflate at the opening, kind of exactly in the staircase. So it would block things, and then it would be inflated in the boardroom. So I like this sort of this one element that would sort of keep migrating. I mean, generally, superhero sighting society install is a bit of a challenge, which Christina dealt with very well, because it's all the mountains are formed by hand, and kind of there were other things because we wanted the floor to be less shiny, so we ended up like kind of buffing it so that it would be more matte. So there are a lot of things also that Mel had to deal with, and a lot of things that came into being that have been discussed. Sorry, I'm just rumbling right here. I'm not sure I can say a lot of things of the value. Okay, shiny floor was a challenge. What else? Not much else that I can remember. Worked well in the space. Wow, I might come across as very arrogant artist say that, like, if I say that everything worked well. It's just like I think it worked fine. Like everything worked fine. I didn't feel that things didn't work, and we came up with some great solutions for the new rules of the pandemic with numbers for the unbound cards. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop. That's it.
I mean, I think it is interesting. I mean, I think it's, in some ways, I think the space isn't always suited to everyone's work, but actually the way that you work with these kind of distinct projects, moving from room to room, actually enabled projects to inhabit a complete space themselves. And then for you to kind of see the connections between them, which is quite good. I mean, yeah, the technical team, I often say at the Tetley, at least we don't have to build any walls. I've spent lots of time in previous galleries building lots of walls, and at the Tetley, it's something we have plenty of. So it's a very good way of showing lots of distinct projects quite easily. But yes, I'm glad it didn't cause any particular challenges. But as you say, the big inflatable balloon, it's the challenge with our particular atrium is that it's a great volume of space, but the ceiling is is not able to take any weight really. So we can't hang things very easily from that space at all. It's just not possible. It's a great 1930s flat roof with skylights in, which is kind of beautiful, but yes, it's not built for hanging things from, unfortunately.
Maybe paper sculpture one day, somebody will make something ginormous out of paper and that would be able to hold. I hope so.
We have done inflatable sculptures before in that space. That's worked quite well.
Okay.
But yes, it's kind of tricky. Someone else asked, what were the mountains made of? And how did you compile and select the printed imagery for them?
So the mountains were made of, on top it was canvas and image printed on canvas, and inside there are two ways of making it. It's either enforced like thicker aluminium foil, or it's a metal mesh that you glue to the canvas and then another canvas on top. Like if you're like really want to technical, so it's a sandwich with sort of metal enforced either mesh or foil. Imagery. So basically, the research for Superhero Sighting Society was done by my amazing project manager, who I worked with at the time, Andrei Yefitz. So he researched all the unclimbed mountains, and then we looked at them at Google Maps. We're like, oh, does this look pretty enough? Is this high enough? So basically, we selected. It's actually not that many unclimbed. So we selected several, and then I think he found somebody who was able to take sort of very high resolution images from Google Earth, and put them together in some way. And that, they are like these screenshots of aerial views, but I'm not sure what type of software they had. And then they stitched them together and we had this kind of print. So they should be quite accurate, but then formed by hand. So I wouldn't say they were like exactly correct, but close enough. Just like the myth I collect, it's close enough. Everything is close enough.
Yeah, I was thinking they'd be great kind of devices for mountaineers wanting to make a name for themselves, that they could kind of walk amongst your maquettes and work out which one they could possibly do.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I just wanted people to put their hand on top and climb it. This was big enabling of actually climbing all of these peaks.
That's great. I was going to ask you actually, Taras, about what's coming up next, and what are you kind of working on at the moment, and what's next for yourself and possibly for Super Taos? What have you got coming up?
Oh, I don't know. Super Taos is pretty busy with her kindergarten work and family, so there's not much coming out from her. I'm currently doing my first public art commission, and it's actually something for a small square in front of a residential building. And I'm quite excited because I've never done anything like that before. And basically I'm just making a ginormous minerals and crystal sculptures. So it's in a way, it's a portrait of different layers of the earth combined into these mineral, beautiful, sparkly things that have different origins embedded in them.
So no figures, no figurative public art.
Yeah. And then there's a big show which I'm quite excited about at the Frieze Museum in Leeuwarden in Netherlands, and they're bringing our static experience. So I'm very happy about that they're going to hang the balloon in their atrium, and they're also bringing this work that I really love, Charivari, which is also kind of a super large. So that's going to open in March, and it's going to be on for 12 months. And I've never had like a museum show run for 12 months. So I'm very excited. Kind of these large works would be there for a long period, and hopefully people will be able to see them and experience them in some way.
That's great. Yeah, I like the idea of a public artwork that isn't figurative. That sounds quite exciting.
Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, I'm not sure if I have anything else to say. But what is next for you, Bryony, and for Tetley?
Oh gosh, well, the next show we've got coming up is an exhibition by Mel Brimfield, and it's called "From This World to That Which Is to Come." So yes, it's quite an interesting show, exhibition around Mel's family experience of mental health, actually, so around psychosis in particular. So it's quite a different exhibition to yours. But yeah, Mel often works with video and with humour, actually. So she often kind of also takes a humorous kind of look at some of these quite difficult subject areas and quite personal subject areas as well. And by bringing a little element of humour to them, actually finds a different way into them and to talking about quite difficult subject areas. So in some ways, a kind of similar kind of take on things to you, really, around humour.
Amazing.
I mean, actually about the humour in your work, because there is a lot, isn't there, really, in the way that you kind of actually approach things, and it's not all done completely seriously. I mean, they are funny, actually Super Tout moving the boulder off the road is done in a very matter-of-fact way, but it's really funny. And just the kind of humour of superpowers moving these huge objects, this unexpected kind of feats of strength and things like that. Yeah, what's your response to humour in your work?
I think it's this thing of like hold your horses in a way, like it relates to this because I'm very interested in this first laughter that you make kind of almost instinctively, like it's super sounds, but then sort of like, oh, what am I laughing at? Like what exactly am I laughing? And the same thing with Unbound and the same thing with like a lot of other projects. It's like, what is this? What is this that makes me laugh? So I think it's this little point that to me is one of the most important points in perceiving artworks.
So to kind of make that kind of reflexive space, so you actually reflect on something rather than just taking it as a kind of funny one-liner. It's that kind of moment afterwards that you reflect on it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully just right there and then, but maybe after is also fine.
No, I think it's it's very true, actually. Yeah, the kind of humor is a reflective humor. It's something that makes you kind of look at yourself as well, rather than just kind of finding it outright funny. It's a kind of quiet, reflective humor in your work. It's been an absolute pleasure having your show for such a long time. It's been a pleasure to have you have the longest running show at the Tetley.
Wow, Guinness Book of Records. I might pitch it, There'll be too many records coming up. But thank you so much, Bryony, and thank you to everyone. Thank you to Mel, and thank you to all the team, Georgia, and it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad it ran for so long. I'm glad it got stuck there.
It has been a really great run, and I'd like to thank the team actually as well, because actually I wasn't around for install, so I was on maternity leave. So thank you to Helen and Mel and everyone who saw through the exhibition install. And I'm really pleased that when I came back, I got to kind of have the show still. So that has been the benefit of 2020's extraordinary times.
Yeah, thanks to Helen too.
But I think, well, Taos, it just leaves me to say thank you so much for your time today on a Sunday as well. So thank you for joining us. Taos, you're in Dubai at the moment, aren't you, Taos? So
it's a work day here. Friday, Saturday is off. Today is a work day, so it's fine. I should thank you for coming on Sunday.
It's quite a nice time to do an in conversation, actually, and it's also, obviously we're doing it at this time of day because of the time difference between us. So to try and make it like a reasonable hour for Taos. So thank you so much for joining us. So yes, if you're able to do an audience survey, we'd be extremely grateful. Please follow the link in the description to complete a survey. It's really useful for us. It helps us develop not only our digital program, but our program in general. Your feedback is most welcome and really useful for us. Also, if you are able to donate, That's fantastic. So we're just doing these talks as pay as you feel or pay as you're able. Any donations that you make are extremely welcome at this time. I'm sure, as everyone knows, it's an extremely challenging time for arts organisations everywhere. And yeah, your support is incredibly welcome at this time. So thank you for that. And yes, thank you all for joining us today. And I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. And thank you so much, Taos, for doing a fantastic in conversation. And thank you, Georgia, behind the scenes, making all the technical things working. So thank you so much. And goodbye. Thank you very much.